It's time for this week's Wrestling Perspective podcast with myself and Petey Williams, which feels like forever and a day since you and I have sat down and recorded a podcast. I miss you, buddy.
Hey, how's she going, I miss you too. I mean, yeah, I missed last week, didn't I? Was that last week that I missed?
It was a lot. We had an OVE takeover. Dave Chris filled in for you. Then Sami Callihan was amazing enough, and I want to talk about this a little bit later, but he was amazing enough to donate almost 40 minutes of his time to a sit-down interview with me, and I can't thank him enough for the time he gave me. And I want to talk because I don't think, I'm going to openly say this, I don't think it was a good interview. Not from him, but because of me. And I want to talk openly about how hard it is to interview someone who is giving them your time. Not only that, but has a certain character, but has agreed to kind of open up a little bit, but you don't want to push it too much. You don't want to jeopardize his character. It was pretty hard for me to kind of toe the line and kind of have fun with them. It was a weird interview for me personally.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like, I mean, first off, like Sami, I love the guy. I've had many private conversations with him regarding wrestling. We'll just say we'll leave it at that because I know he's very protective of his character, and I'll respect that. I definitely will. But it's tough because most of our interviews, minus the Jimmy Jacobs one we did a couple weeks back, like they're like 15-minute interviews. Like we get to like the core stuff that we want to talk about, kind of like scratch the surface of everything, and then that's it. So to do 40 minutes, I mean that's a different ball game. That's a game changer because it's like you hit all the good stuff. Like you do all your high spots at the beginning of the interview, and then you're like, okay, where do I go from here? I have to keep going, and I don't know where to go. So it's tough. I mean, I totally get that, Dennis. For as good as I know that you are at interviewing, because you've been doing it for so long, it's to go 40 minutes a la Ric Flair. I mean, that's tough.
There's a Blue Chew ad in here somewhere where we can circle back to that later. But
Yeah, definitely.
But I want to also, I didn't tell you this because I didn't want you to feel kind of odd that you didn't get me a gift or anything, but happy 2-year anniversary with the Wrestling Perspective, you and I.
You know what? I was going to say something, but I'm like, man, is that weird if I know the exact date of our 2-year anniversary? And I'm like, that's weird. So I was just like, if he brings something up, then I'll say, hey, happy anniversary. But so happy anniversary since you brought it up.
What you're not secure in our friendship to bring up something like that? I mean,
well, I thought you'd be like, Petey, that's so weird that you remember. Like, how do you remember that? But I definitely remember. I definitely do.
For those who were not, and our fan base has grown 3-4 times over back then. The Wrestling Perspective actually started out as like 1 week at a time. I had hounded Petey for several months to do a wrestling podcast with me because I was just so bored with fantasy football and doing that kind of stuff, and I wanted to change directions. Always loved wrestling. Pete, you were retired at the time, and we would talk for hours via text and on the phone just about wrestling. I'm like, why aren't we doing this on the mic? And finally, I wore you down where you're like, all right, I'll do 1. And if I like it, I'll do 2. And that's as far as I am going to commit. And 2 years later.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, man, I remember that first one. It was just, it's so weird how we have transitioned and have grown since then. I remember like the first couple, I even asked my wife to listen, and now my wife, obviously she doesn't listen. We've been doing this every week for 2 years. I love that she's a guest on the show and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's just, man, it's crazy. I never thought we'd be doing this 2 years later. I really didn't.
What's funny is I actually went back and listened to a few episodes. All we did was like Raw and SmackDown recaps. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, that was before I went back to Impact because that was I believe February 2017. I didn't go back to Impact till I think like August 2017. And obviously there was from like March-ish, February or March, there was them trying to get me back and all that stuff. And then, we had to kind of keep that secret. We didn't talk about that and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we didn't really have anything to talk about. Like, we really didn't. So it was like, okay, let's talk Raw and SmackDown. And I just remember always talking about Roman Reigns because that was his transition period where they were really pushing him as the next guy, and the crowd was booing him. And I remember, we just analyzed everything about that at that time. So I mean, it was a fun time. I mean, it really made me think about like it was 2017 was a big transition in wrestling. So I'm glad we started doing the podcast then.
And listen, big announcement. Next week, we're actually changing the name of the podcast to Panama Sunrise.
I mean, I can't wait. I mean, we put a lot of time and effort into thinking about this name. Why not just change it just on a whim? Makes sense.
So here's how the show's going to go. Petey and I are going to sit here and talk about the name change of his wrestling move and a little background about it. And we're going to discuss this. After that, we're going to do a Blue Chew ad. And then after that, Petey's going to actually interview me. I
am? This is great. Yeah, okay, I like it.
Look, 2 years. Let's do something a little different.
All right. So don't tune out now, guys. Like, I mean, we still have a lot to talk about. Like, if you're like, oh man, I don't want to hear this. No, this is gonna be good.
Here's the setup. Over the weekend, well, actually last week when I was interviewing Dave Chris, he kind of threw out an interview, a invite over the podcast, like, hey, we're doing our last show at Rockstar Pro in Dayton. You should come out. And I'm, 90% sure it was like, all right, I'm going to be polite. So we get off, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, boy, that would be fun. I wonder if I can swing it. I start kind of doing the math. I'm like, I think I can do this. And then I text him. I said, hey, were you serious about this? Because I'll come down for your show. He's like, absolutely. I brought a friend. We go down there. And then Sunday, I was privileged enough. There were 2 lady fans of our podcast who are absolutely the best. We'll get into who they are and their, believe it or not, their influence in the Twitter world of wrestling. They may play down, but they've got some swing around the Ring of Honor, Twitter feeds and wrestlers. So I went to Ethan Page's Alpha-1 show out in Hamilton, Ontario, which was phenomenal. I can't say enough great things about how friendly they were. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later.
All right. I mean, this sounds good. I mean, I can't wait for this.
All right. So let's talk about the Adam Cole Canadian Destroyer. You have taken a lot of heat on Twitter, and we talked about it off and on. And finally, you're like, dude, I don't know what I did wrong, but people are absolutely hating on me on Twitter. So as a friend, I step in and kind of say, hey, guys, really, you're going to get mad. And I kind of saw a mixed reaction of some people going, hey, it's wrestling. Moves get stolen every day. Get over it. Or, he's been doing it for years. Suck it up. And a ton of people actually came to your defense this time around, which was refreshing to see. And as a friend, I'm going to start this topic off by, it goes beyond stealing and beyond renaming. If you're okay with people using it, it's, I think everybody understands that. But it's not that and I'm just going to try to put words in your mouth, and feel free to bounce off here. It's not so much that Adam Cole changed the name or has used it for years. It's just you personally, the Canadian Destroyer, name is personal. It means something to you. It's not like you named it, the Oshawa Flip or something, and for no reason, but it rhymes, and then someone changed it. Now you're upset.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with that. I mean, starting next month, that move, like I debuted 16 years ago. I mean, I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast that are 16 years old, and they're like, man, I wasn't even born yet, or I was I was in diapers still. So it's been 16 years. And, just to go back, and I've mentioned it on the podcast many times before, the name of the move, it has nothing to do with nationality or anything. A lot of people think like, well, Petey's Canadian, so he called it the Canadian Destroyer. So I'm from Mexico, so I'm going to call it the Mexican Destroyer. I'm from this country, so I'm going to call it the Asian Destroyer, or what. It has nothing to do with that. The person, I named it after a person. His name was Doug Chevalier, and he passed away probably, I think it was it 99 or 2000? I mean, some years ago, like 19 years ago. And he's the individual that started the Can-Am, wrestling school that Scott D'Amore runs now. He trained Scott D'Amore. He trained Rhino from WWE. And a lot of other people have came out of that school, like the Motor City Machine Guns. Like they didn't start training there, but they trained there. A lot of people have stopped by, like even like what's Claudio's name now? Like Cesaro, like so many people know of that Can-Am wrestling school, and it's like very prestigious. And Doug was a big part of that. And so, and I remember being back when Impact was TNA, when I debuted that move on TV, and it was 2004. They said, "Hey, we need a name for that move." And I didn't I didn't know. I'm like, what's a cool name? That's what you first think of. You like the Diamond Cutter or the Stone Cold Star, or like whatever the case may be. I'm like, what do I name this move? And I had no idea. Like the Polar Vortex or something like that. Like that's a cool name. But I'm like, no, I want the name to have meaning. And so I said, hey, I said to Scott, I said, what do you think of the Canadian Destroyer? And Scott kind of looked at me and like he was kind of thrown aback, and he was like, that's not really a name. Like that's a name of a person. And I'm like, I think we could pull it off as the name of the move, like kind of we're in Team Canada. This all started through, Doug Chevalier. Like my first independent show that I worked security was the Doug Chevalier Memorial after he just passed. And I'm like, I think this has a good meaning to it. Like I don't even care that it's a flipping pile driver move. I don't care if I do, a punch to the face as a finishing move or whatever, a body slam. Just the name really meant something to me and the individuals that train there. So that was the part of it. And then people just start calling me the Canadian Destroyer, which is fine because then Doug's legacy will live on forever. So it had more meaning than, oh, they called it the Destroyer and he's Canadian. So it has a lot more meaning than that. But I mean, Dennis, I don't think a lot of people realize like how difficult it was in 2003, how difficult it was to get people to take that move. Like there was there was no moves out there like that at the time that people were taking on a regular basis. Like 2019, a Canadian Destroyer is done every single weekend. I mean, okay, it is what it is. It's a different day and age. But in 2003, like I remember when, I was going to do it with Chris Sabin, and he was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I don't know if I should take it. I mean, it seems pretty dangerous. Like this is before 2003. Like, I mean, YouTube was probably around, but it wasn't really a thing. Like I remember in 2003, I was not buying, but when I had matches at IWA Mid-South, I was getting VHS tapes from them of my matches, not even DVDs. I don't think DVDs were like a big thing in wrestling until about, like 2004. Like that's when they started moving those. So, I mean, it was next to impossible to get people to take this move because I can't just pull up my phone. Because back then we had flip phones. There was no YouTube or video or anything. I couldn't say, hey, this is what the move looks like. There was none of that. So just to describe this, like, wait, you want to do a flipping pile driver? They're like, no, I'm not taking that. And people are like, the Diamond Cutter, that was renamed the RKO. And before that, it was the Ace Crusher. I'm like, okay, in 2003, if I were to explain to you, or even like in the 80s, if I were to say, hey, I'm going to grab your head and then I'm going to fall to my back, you're going to fall to your stomach. That's the move. People would be like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. That's fine. That's super safe. Right? No problem. But in 2003, when I'm trying to explain this move to people, they're like, no, I'm not going to take that. That seems way too dangerous. So then, I got shot down. And then I was so blown away when I did it to Matt Seidel. Like I said to Matt, I said, hey, I want to try this new move. And it's like this, and I didn't really know how to explain it because I've never done it before. And he's like, okay. Like, I mean, I was not expecting that. I was expecting him to ask me more questions and all this kind of stuff. He just said, okay. And we did it, and that was the beginning of it. So, I always thank and I always mention Matt Seidel. He was the first one I ever did it to because he had no idea what to expect. Like, he didn't know if I was going to kill him or anything like that, and I did it. And it was safe. And then, moving forward, I was like, I tried to give it. I was like, Sanjay, let's do this straight. He's like, no, man, I don't feel. I can't take that. And since then, Sanjay's taken it 100 times. And Alex Shelley has said no before. Before he decided, like, oh yeah, okay, I trust Petey. He's not hurting anybody. I'll take it. AJ Styles has said no. Like, there's a list of people that have said no. I'm not taking that move. So it was like next to impossible to try to get some steam behind this move and just to lay the groundwork for it. And then and I remember going to these like independent shows where in 2003 people didn't know who I was. And even in 2004, they're like, I don't know. I don't want to take that move. It looks dangerous. And when I finally started getting going with it and like begging people, oh, it's safe, don't worry. And I use the word beg because I pretty much had to say, like, hey, man, I've done it to this person. It's safe. Trust me, I'll take care of you, all this kind of stuff. And now, at 2019, I pretty much can't find a wrestler that hasn't done the move at all. So it just the transition is so people don't understand how hard I worked to get this move that everybody does now, to get this move into pro wrestling and do all the legwork for that. And they're like, oh, I'm going to do that move. And then they do it and they're like, yeah, whatever. I renamed it. It's no big deal. It's like, okay, well, it's kind of a big deal because just to get that move in the door, it was like, it was a nightmare.
And all it would take is a little nod and a wink, even on commentary, like, that move's been named the Canadian Destroyer, or even something as simple as that, which WWE won't acknowledge anything outside its doors. I did put out this reference, so if you don't follow me on Twitter and you listen to the podcast, I kind of equate it to like, you've invented a widget. It is going to be life-changing for you. You're going to be able to feed your family and work less. You decide that you're going to open up a widget store, and you open it up. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into this store. And then all of a sudden you wake up and there's 25 widget stores all around you. And, some widget stores are good. Other people had a little bit more money and their widget stores are bigger and a little more popular. And now your widget store is just another widget store. And that's kind of what the Canadian Destroyer is. It sadly, it's one of the coolest looking moves, and now people use it 4 times in a match, and it devalues everything you've tried to do. I mean, it is your finishing move. You've never used it in the middle of a match to get to something. It's only what you've allowed only one person, Eli Drake, ever to kick out of it. It's special, and now it kind of sucks when you see Rey Mysterio do it in the middle of a match for no reason at all. Not even storytelling. Adam Cole does the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's fine. Like, I understand, like, that's pro wrestling nowadays, like, whatever. And I mean, I don't even care, like I said, the tough part is, it would have been interesting if I've never done the move, like, who would have, kind of tried to get that move into pro wrestling, because it wasn't easy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It wasn't easy where I was like, hey, yeah, my finishing move is a flip pile driver. Okay, let's do it. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, I wish it was like that. 2019, yeah, it's like that now. But in 2003, absolutely not. Like, it was like, I'm taking a move that people are like, that doesn't even make sense. And transition into pro wrestling where now it's just like, it's just another move. Now it's just a repertoire that people do. And regardless of like anything else, like, just getting that into the mainstream was like one of the toughest things. But I knew, like, I had something special here, and I didn't always, I remember when I first had it, I didn't know. Once I was getting it in the wrestling business, I was like, okay, I got it in. People know this, and like, they're okay with taking it now. And then I was like, but nobody really cares about my match. They're just like, come on, man, hit the Destroyer. Let's go. This is what we paid to see. Like, just get to the next 15 minutes of this match so we see the King and Destroyer. That's what we're here for. And I'm like, man, they don't care about any other moves I do. So I had to like kind of play around with how I did my matches because I understood what people wanted to see, and that's what's different about like having a finishing move, whether it's like a DDT, diamond cutter, a flipping pile driver, it doesn't matter. When you just throw a move in, you could do a power bomb at the beginning of the match or whatever, or you could be Kevin Nash and do it at the end of the match. Like, it's how you get to your finishing move and how you get it over, and that's the tough part about it.
You mentioned Diamond Cutter, and in our Twitter thread, well, one guy, and I'm not going to call him a jackleg or anything, he was very polite after he did the legwork and realized what I had said. It throws out, well, you don't see DDP complaining that Randy Orton used it. And I said, well, hang on. DDP actually reached out to Randy Orton and essentially begged him to use this as his finishing move, which is totally different because DDP did this when he retired. And DDP actually got it from, is it Johnny Ace?
Yeah.
So, it's the same thing. But the only difference was, Diamond Dallas Page waited until he retired. Nobody stole the Diamond Cutter. You didn't see it everywhere until DDP retired. Now
it was a different day and age back then. Like back before 2019, like, a move was, like, oh, if it's a diamond cutter or a cutter, because a lot of people just call it cutters now, reference to the diamond cutter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's DDP's thing. I mean, that's just what you did. Like, you didn't want to be like a ripoff. But 2019, it's way different. I guess you could do anybody's move anytime, anywhere. And people are like, oh, do you see DDP complaining? And I'm like, okay, first off,
right.
I mean, there was no social media back then. I'm like, you don't know if he was hot about it or anything. Like, you don't. I said, I don't care who does it. I'm like, to me, it's just the name of it. It means something to me. Like, I don't think the name Diamond Cutter, I don't think Diamond Cutter was the mentor of Diamond Dallas Page. It's just a cool name.
Whoa. I did some research, and believe it or not, that was actually his great-grandmother's name, Diamond Cutter.
I'm pretty sure it was.
So
Diamond Cutter Dallas, or Diamond Cutter Page. Yep. Yeah, that's correct.
Ethel
Diamond Page.
Yes, Ethel Diamond Cutter Page.
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, that was, believe it or not, that's totally true. But switching gears a little bit, and we poke fun on the podcast. Like, we've decided that once a year we're only going to give permission to one wrestler to be able to do it. Last year, 2018, we gave it to Chelsea Green, who, believe it or not, was like ecstatic that you gave her your blessing.
Yeah, go ahead and do it. Like, I would love to say that for Adam Cole now, but like, I'll be honest with you, and I'll be candid about this. I've been in the same building with Adam Cole and stuff, and he's never even came over and introduced himself ever. And I'm like, this is odd. Like, I know you do a flipping pile driver, and I'm like, and I know you, like, when I started doing it, when he probably watched me on TV in 2004 when he was like 14 years old. I know he's seen me do it, and I'm like, I think it's kind of odd that he didn't come over and introduce myself. Not that, I'm stuck up, because I'll go and I'll introduce myself to everybody.
You did it to Cody.
Yeah. And, but with Adam Cole, I'm like, I'm going to see if he says anything to me first, kind of like a little game. And he didn't. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe he's embarrassed about, like, oh, I know that's Petey's move and he knows that I do his move. Yeah, I do know. But, own it. Have the extreme ownership of, like, yeah, man, I do your move, whatever. And it would have been a whole different thing.
Unfortunately, that's not how that went down. So,
no.
And I don't know if you would call it heat. I think it's just a respect thing. And unfortunately, Adam Cole,
which is dead. Respect is so dead in 2019. It's like, I just don't even understand it nowadays.
Oh,
I mean, I think social media kind of ruined it, I think, because people could get themselves over now rather than trying to work themselves up in the business like this business has always been. I also think, like, it's just so different because, the wrestlers push to be better, I guess, but they do that because the fans they also want more. They're like, no, we want to see more stuff. And now you see out there, and I'll probably get a lot of heat for saying this, but like a lot of the wrestlers can do everything. But I think that's the problem nowadays is that all the wrestlers, I don't want to say that they're the same because everybody's like, oh, this person's different, but they can do a lot of the same stuff athletically. Okay. It's just a different era. So the fans push for that. They got that. And then and then they're like, okay, why aren't the ratings higher and all that kind of stuff? Like, well, it's because you have a lot of the guys that can do the exact same stuff because the fans wanted more. So we're giving them more. And it was we all ruined it for ourselves. Like when you want more, the wrestlers give more. So it's the wrestlers' fault. It's also the fans' fault because they want more. And now this is where we're at right now. But it's still, it's like with AEW and stuff like that and what's going on. Like it's a really interesting time in the wrestling business. I want to kind of listen to this interview 2 years from now when everything's rolling to see what happens in the future.
Wow, I don't think you will because you haven't listened to mine and Sammy's interview yet. I'm a little hurt.
Yeah, but I have to wait 2 years to listen to that.
Oh, is
I go 2 years back, so starting today, I'm going to listen to our first interview.
Oh, that's nice. Now you want to talk about respect? I actually had, I don't know if a Twitter dust up maybe with a wrestler I saw this weekend, Petey, and it went to lack of respect. So a young man named, and I'm going to call him out, Kobe Durst. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No, where was this at? Was this at Alpha-1 or was this at
Alpha-1?
Rockstar?
So I go with Kingdom Carey and Sassy Greyjoy, two ladies on Twitter, phenomenal follows, amazing people, right? One of the most fun car rides I've ever had. We get there and we're watching the show, and Carrie kind of turns to me and had said, this Kobe Durst guy, I'm a little hurt by him. I'm like, really? Why? She's like, I took some pictures of him and posted them on my Twitter. He follows me, takes the pictures, puts them up on his Instagram, changes the filters, and kind of takes credit for the pictures. And I kind of thought, all right, if this is like Sami Callihan or somebody else, you go, you know what? That's cool. That's awesome. But when you're a indie wrestler trying to make your way and you have a fan take the time to take a picture and post it and is excited, give them credit. And this may go back to your move, but it irked me. And then he kind of no-sold her too at the show, like whatever, and moved on. She didn't say anything, but you take someone's picture from them that they post, then you turn around and act too cool to say hi to you at a show. So I go on Twitter, and you know what? I'm a little, excuse my language, shit disturber. I get it, and I'm okay with it. And I kind of had said, and I was very neutral about my post. It said, I saw this picture on Instagram and noticed it's here. I don't know who did what, but boy, wouldn't it be nice if someone kind of got credit? And I'm paraphrasing. Like, I don't know who did what here. And he replies, I deleted it, and then blocks me. And I just want to say that I think that is so immature. If you get busted and you're still in the picture, just say, hey, you know what? Sorry about that. I appreciate it. Thank you for taking a picture of me, and move on. But when you're a independent slub, and I'm going to use it with this term here, I'm sure he's a nice guy. And I hope one day I can sit down and talk to him. But from this instance, when you're acting too cool for school and you can't even give your fans the pleasure of saying, hey, you know what? Thank you. You know what? You can go pound sand in my book.
Well, I mean, no, you're absolutely right, Dennis. I mean, I've never heard of this wrestler. Maybe I have, but maybe I haven't. But the name's not ringing a bell. And I mean, I seen that's like a low of what happened to you this past weekend. But what was your first show? It was Rockstar Pro?
It was Rockstar Pro. Phenomenal, by the way. I did not know what to expect. As I kind of said, Dave sent me an invite to come down, and I brought Russ. And I know Russ will listen to this interview, but can I say something about Russ that?
Oh, just don't bury him, because if he needs to step in on my absence, we need him. Yeah, go ahead, bury him. Go, do it.
And he knows I love him to death. He knows he's one of my good friends.
I love Russ too, man. He's absolutely great. I love him.
But Russ can talk, and Russ can talk, and Russ can talk, and Russ can talk. And it was great on the way down, and he kept me awake and entertaining. On the way back, there was a moment, and I still giggle about this, and I know Russ won't be sore, but I'll probably tease him because he's been filling in on the radio show for you. So I'm kind of making him a star, so I can do this here. On the way back, I'm like, hey, Russ, I'm tired. I need to take a quick nap because, I still have to drop him off at his house, and then it's an extra hour to my house, and it's like 4 a.m., 3 a.m. at this time. So we switch, we start driving, and Russ is talking. Not annoying by no stretch, but just talking. And
so you can't fall asleep. Yeah, I get it.
And finally, I'm like, Russ, you got to be quiet. I'm trying to sleep. I felt bad, but it was, God bless him. I love Russ.
Hey, no, I love Russ. I mean, believe it or not, like, you could say what you want about him, but he's a badass in real life, man.
I know.
Like, I've done like MMA stuff with him, and he could kick some butt, man. Like, I mean, dude, when I'm walking downtown Detroit, like when we go to those shows or whatever, when Russ is with us, I'm like, dude, talk as loud as you want, Russ, and say whatever you want, because I know you can back it up unless the guy has a gun. But I mean, I know you can kick anybody's butt, man. I mean, you do it. But in real life, and I say real life because, wrestling, but in real life, Russ is man, he could kick some butt.
So, and by the way, he comes and fixes stuff at my house all the time. So I love him.
What, he does?
Yes.
He fixes stuff at your house? Oh, he's coming over to my house. My butler can't do crap. He's not like a handy guy. So I need a handy guy. So, okay. All right. This is good to know. So anyways, you've talked about all the negative stuff. Let's get rid of that negative stuff that happened over the weekend. Let's talk about some good stuff that happened. Let's start with Rockstar Pro, and then we'll go to Alpha-1.
I can't say enough great things because I don't know what to expect. It's their last show in this building, which was a nice building to begin with. They had their own little bar, and apparently they're opening up a new place. They're going to have a restaurant attached to it, and Sami, kind of had said, they're going to try to do some live podcasts. He wants us to come down and do one. So
awesome. Okay, I'm there.
I geeked out a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I was like, listen, that interview I did with Sami, it was 40 minutes of me trying not to be a fanboy. And I say this because I'm not a journalist. I never pretend to be a journalist. I'm just a fan who's lucky enough to have you as a friend to hook me up with other of your friends. And I think Sami and I are slowly becoming friends. I think we're a little more than acquaintances, a little less than friends right now, although he did give me his phone number. Once again, geeked out about it. But never once do I know that, look, I'm building my own inroads with some of these guys, which is cool, but I'm still just, Petey's friend. So when I got invited out to the show, I went there not expecting any special treatment, and nor did I get any really, which is nice because I went as a fan. I don't know the last time I went to a show as a fan. I always went with you and carry the podcast equipment and just sit back and hang out. So it was really nice. The show was phenomenal. By the way, Rockstar Pro, not one Canadian destroyer.
Oh, well, not that I care, but the move's been used so much that where I think people are like, I don't want to do a Canadian destroyer because people have seen it way too many times. But Sami has told me before, we're like, hey, man, I did a show and we had like 4 Canadian destroyers in the first minute of this 4-way match. And I'm like, and I've talked about this on the podcast where Sami was like, I don't want to get off topic about going back to Canadian Destroyer, but anyways, go on. No Canadian Destroyers on the show. None
on the show. Let's see here. Sami wrestled badass Billy Gunn, Mr. Ass. Which
how was that?
You know what? It was better than I thought it would be. It really
You know
was.
what? Yeah, because I know Billy, and Billy's he's pretty old school. He likes to keep everything simple, but he will keep it very entertaining and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm glad. I mean, I can't see that contrast, that mix of Sammy versus Billy, but I'm good at it. It exceeded your expectations.
It absolutely did. It was entertaining, and they pulled it off very well. The end was, and I feel bad that I don't remember who Dave Chris wrestled, but I got to tell you, the character was very Clockwork Orange esque, and
Nice.
I've never seen a entrance song fit a character any better than the guy Dave Chris wrestled. It was a not cactus match, a casket match. Cactus match would be totally ugly, by the way.
Oh man, I think you just came up with something new. But anyways,
Wait until next Impact tapings. You'll see a ton of cactus matches.
cactus matches. Are you sure you didn't say casket match? Nope, you said cactus match.
That's it. But and I even told Dave at Alpha-1. I'm sorry. I told Dave. I
Yeah.
said he did this one spot where he jumped onto the casket and really sold that he hurt his ankle. So much so you saw him unbuckle the padding on his boot, and one of the refs ran to the back, and I'm like, I turned to the ref, I'm like, I think he's really hurt. Holy cow! And it wasn't until probably about 2 minutes later he does a corner spot. I go, oh, he got me.
That's good because those are really hard to do. Like I remember people always pitching like, "Oh, let's do this spot where I hurt my ankle and the ref like or whatever," and we get then I'm stretchered and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I hate that stuff because on TV when they actually film that, like you just it's a work. Like that's the way I look at it. I'm like if they're filming it, like usually when like real injuries happen, they keep the camera away from it. They usually like cut to a commercial break or what like that's what makes it look real. So when they do stuff like that, I'm like, oh man, like usually the match would end like right then and there if it was an actual legit injury. So I always hated it because I'm like, oh, this is a work. But that's just me personally. Like I've always hated that. I've had people pitch like, oh yeah, let me do a leapfrog and I'll hurt my knee, and I'm like, I hate that stuff, man. Nobody buys it as real. So it's good that you bought it. They were able to sell it as being real.
Dave sold it
Yeah,
so great. I cannot say enough great things at the way Dave Chris sold that move. So I gotta say that show was great. I got to talk with Sammy a little bit, and I'm like, hey, when are we gonna record this interview? So Sammy's, God bless him, he's like, hey, bring your podcast equipment to Alpha-1. I'm sorry, I don't know why I call it Alpha Pro.
it's because it's Rockstar Pro, Alpha Pro. It's a spoonerism. Anyways, go on.
There it is. So he's like, bring your podcast stuff to Alpha and we'll record there. I'm like, I don't really, I turned it like, okay. He's like, I don't want to do it over the phone because my phone cuts out. I'm like, what do you have, like a flip phone or something? Come on, Sammy. So,
Dude, it's in Canada though, man. Canada, like phone service is all wonky up there when you have an American cell phone. So I get where he's from.
so,
I get where he's coming from.
so Super Bowl Sunday, Carrie, Sassy, we jump in the car. I don't want to use the real names. I'll just use their Twitter names. We jump in a car. We drive down. Car ride was a blast, right? I've never, you know what? It was kind of a cool feeling because I'm sitting there and I like to think that, I share some stories about talking to people and how cool this guy is and, stuff like that, which made me feel kind of like insidey and kind of cool. And now I kind of know how, you guys feel with me in the back seat where I'm like, oh, tell me about this. So it was a really different contrast and really cool. I really enjoyed the switch in roles for me there. Driving up was a blast. We had some lunch at a really cool sports bar. I bring the podcast equipment, and now these are girls, like they're part of the Ring of Honor girls, or ladies of Ring of Honor. I wish I could remember that hashtag, and I apologize to them if they're listening right now. But they've been to a lot of shows. They were kind of like me. You never get the special treatment. You always wait in line. You buy the VIPs, right? So I grab my podcast stuff. I'm like, all right, follow me in. And they're like, well, don't we have to wait in line? I'm like, no, no, no. Come on. I got this. I've been
Oh boy, Dennis, you're already starting. Okay, Petey taught me this. Let's go.
kind of. Well, I put on the button up shirt and the little vest, and they're kind of giggling and making fun of me. And I'm like, look, I like to look professional when I do this. It helps out because if I walk in there with an OVE shirt, then they're going to be like, dude, what are you doing here? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you go in, you dress a little bit more professional. Nobody questions you. I walk in, nobody says anything. We kind of sit up in the corner, and then the waiting game starts. Dave Chris walks up. We talk for a few. Dave was phenomenal. Talked to both ladies. We got in a great conversation about religion, and then he goes off the stretch, and it's like still waiting for Sami. Still waiting for Sami. And even Sami admits that, it's hard to get a hold of him.
Oh yeah.
So I think it wasn't until, I don't think I saw him in intermission either. It wasn't until the end of the show where I think if I can remember this correctly, I finally see him and say, hey, what's up? He's like, hey, you want to do it now? I'm like, dude, nah, the show's over. Let's just do it later by phone. He's like, oh man, I'm sorry. Phenomenal. And it's the first real time I ever got to really watch Sami. And this is one of these guys who truly values his fan base. I saw him talk to every single person, not rush them through line for a t-shirt. He was gracious and kind and didn't push people. We've been at shows where it's some wrestlers were, how many people can they get through their line and get done with it? And unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes. But Sami took time with his fans. It blew me away. Comes over, we talk, and I tried to buy a shirt because if I get into a show for free, I want to give a couple bucks back to say thank you. You didn't have to let me in. So I tried to buy a shirt. He wouldn't take my money. He gave me a shirt, and I ended up giving the shirt to one of the ladies because I'm going to buy a shirt later anyways. And I want to say thank you to them for their hospitality. So I'm rambling right now about how awesome Sami is. He's not but cooler than you, Pete. Don't worry. Don't worry.
No, I know Sami, and I love Sami. I love talking to him and all that kind of stuff. Working with him at Impact and everything. And I've told him, I'm like, hey man, I think you're like a top, like you can be the world champion here. Like he has, and I've told him, like when we interviewed him the very first time, I said, Sami, I'm like, you used to watch me on TV. You've told me that. And you mark out for me, but now I watch you on TV and mark out for you. And he's like, oh man, like thanks. Like, and that was that's the only time I really see Sami like sentimental or anything. But no, I love Sami, and he's so passionate about the business. Like I've had to tell him times to like, dude, let it go. Like that's not worth it. Like, but he's just so passionate about making things right and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, and believe it or not, I've only wrestled Sami twice, and both times there was 4 other guys in our match. We did like a 6-man for Ring of Honor, and in Windsor for one of our Twitch shows or whatever the case may be. We did a 6-man tag, and every time like he's business, and so I totally get when he couldn't get the interview with you, because he's super professional. Believe it or not, he's super professional, business, understands his job. Like I could work with Sami every day because like his mindset is the same as my mindset. Like you just want to go out there and perform and your business. And I totally get that.
Here was the thing I was trying to get to. And I don't know if this is going to be a little bit of stereotype in here, but I'm going to shoot the arrow and see where it lands and if you agree or disagree. You kind of can tell after the show, after the people wait in line, where there are a couple families that probably spent, their last bit of free money they had to bring their kids to a show. and they kind of linger, just hoping to shake the guy's hand, not expecting or asking. Maybe they may ask for a photo. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Maybe go on.
And there was a family there that kind of fit the qualification. They waited until everybody left. They were very polite. They waited until he was almost done packing up, and walked up very respectfully and said, "Hey, our son's a huge fan," and whatnot. And I saw Sami Callihan, and I don't care if he gets mad for me saying this. Take out a shirt and give it to the kid. Just give it to the kid. Didn't have to do it. Gave it to the kid, and was like, I got one small left, and I don't really want to pack it. I want you to have it, And sat there, talked with the kid, took pictures. Didn't have to do any of that. And right there, when I saw that, I knew Sami Callihan might be my new favorite wrestler. And you know what? He might be my new favorite person. I've seen you do it, and it endears me to you for forever. But when I saw Sami do that, I thought, you know what? What a great person. It's just I don't know how to put it other than what a great person.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, I don't know if it's me, Sami, just wrestlers in general, like, we understand that we're nothing without the fans. If there's no fans in the seats, if there's no fans cheering, if there's no fans talking about us, then there's nothing. I mean, we don't have a business. So we totally get that. Like, I know I've been in lines where they're like, oh, $5 for a picture with your own camera. And okay, if that's the rule, we'll do it. But then if people are like, hey, can I get a picture with you? Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to charge you an extra $5 to take a picture with your own camera. I don't care. Like, people are asking me to have a picture with me. Like, I mean, to me, that's like the ultimate compliment. I'm like, I know there's people outside of wrestling that don't know who I am, and they're like, they could care less about me. So, I mean, if it means that much to you, yeah. Absolutely. Like, I'm like, let's go. Let's take a picture. I'm like, all day long. I'll do that.
Now, with that being said, please, people, don't approach me asking for pictures. It's $7.
It's $7. Yeah, $8.
$8. It's $8, and you better have correct change. I'm not giving you back
change. Yeah. If not, it's going to be 10, and I round up to. Yeah, I get it.
That's right. Look, we've got a Blue Chew ad that we're going to have to fit in here in a second, but I just want to kind of say, Pete, the last 2 years have really been phenomenal and fun, and I feel like a kid again, going to wrestling shows and really, before we started doing this, I liked wrestling. And being 40, 41 now, I was at the stage where you can't really openly say I like wrestling without being ostracized by business people your own age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being able to do the show and coming out of my shell, not caring who I tell that I like and love and watch wrestling is refreshing. And, without you, bud, this is the mushy moment here, but without you, I don't know what I would be doing in the podcast. Maybe I would still be on the radio doing fantasy football and hating every minute of it. But I am having the most fun I have ever had in the broadcast industry, just tooling around for 45, 50 minutes a week with you. Thank you.
No, and I mean, and thank you, Dennis. I mean, I don't, in normal everyday life, I don't talk a lot of wrestling and stuff like that. I know a lot of people ask me that aren't wrestling fans about wrestling. I have to keep it very simplified, I guess you could say. I mean, they don't know much about it. So, I just enjoy so much, like, every week where we could talk wrestling. And even when we're not on the air talking wrestling, we could text each other and talk off the air about wrestling and stuff. Like, I grew up loving this business and just loving wrestling. You grew up loving wrestling. And I mean, just as adults that are like, oh, I'm almost 40, you're 40, and just talking wrestling. I'm like, this is our lifestyle, man. Like, this is what we do. And just to be able to do it and have other people listen to us, shoot the breeze. That just means the world to me.
The people I have met through you have been phenomenal. First and foremost, once again, thank you, Dave, Chris, and Thank you, Sami Callihan, for the invite out to Rockstar Pro and doing the interview. Ethan Page, thank you so much for allowing me to come out. We bought tickets, but we still snuck in a little bit early, and I gave two fans. I was fortunate enough to let two fans who love wrestling kind of see a little bit of the back door that I saw. And I saw a lot of what happened with me my first time. One of them was too afraid to look in the ring while they were going through their matches because they just didn't want it to be ruined for them. And I thought, that's a love right there for something that, you don't see a lot of anymore. And I respected it, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, and Dennis, and I appreciate that. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, what's going to happen next? And everybody's all about spoilers nowadays. But it's good that, they buy a ticket for the show or just come to the show and they're like, they don't want things to be spoiled. They want to be surprised and stuff like that. Like that's stuff probably what you did when you went to Alpha-1. And you're like, I don't want to know what happened at the Super Bowl. I want to be able to watch it. I DVR'd it and stuff like that. Like you could have so looked on social media and been like, oh, my team, the Patriots, they won. Awesome. But you didn't.
Yeah. And so, yeah, absolutely. Ethan Page, what a great show you put on. From match one to the end, I was thoroughly entertained. You know what? And I'm not saying this, and I would give you an honest report on the show, right?
Oh, I guarantee you absolutely you would.
Look, I called out one of the wrestlers, for God's sakes, earlier on the podcast, so I'm not afraid to. But there wasn't a match on the Alpha show that I thought was a bathroom break match. The only critique I have for it, and I don't know if they could have changed this, was there was no barricades between the fans and the ring, right? And there was just one guy. What a dumbass. Because there was just one guy that kept constantly in the middle of a match getting up and getting more beer, getting up and peeing. There was one time where he got up and was going to walk through, and they were doing a dive spot, and like another fan had to hold him back from getting killed. And then he got a little pissy with that guy. And I thought, if there was a way to maybe put a ref on each corner or do something a little bit more, there was a spot where Sammy's laying on the ground, right, in the middle of a match, and there are fans walking around him to go to the bathroom. And I really felt like that was kind of disrespectful.
Yeah, and I mean, and it all depends on budget too. It's like, okay, do you want to pay to rent barricades, or can I have an extra few $100s to book this guy? And if I was Ethan Page, I'd be like, you know what? We don't need barricades, because I've been on shows that don't have barricades. For example, we have Twitch shows at the Diamondback there in Belleville, and they don't have the barricades, the guardrails. And I've actually gotten a fight with a guy before because he pushed me when I was about to catch a dive on Alex Shelley. I've talked about this on the podcast before. And I'm like, if there's a barricade there, that wouldn't have happened. But I get it. I mean, it sucks. But at the same time, it's like, all right, you take a calculated risk. It's like, do I book this guy, or do I not get this awesome guy on my show and get barricades? It all depends.
And you know what? I think if you, and I'm not critiquing the way he did this, because it was just one guy. I couldn't tell on the other side of the ring. It was one guy, and apparently the ladies I went with have been to this show, and this guy is kind of notorious for doing this. So I think there's, you make announcements like, please, refrain from getting up in the matches, and if you have to, walk behind the chairs or something. But other than that, there was not one match that I would deem a bathroom break match. From the opening match to the main event, phenomenal.
Well, I mean, good. I mean, I know I've been on those shows before, and I've been on the shows with Dave and Jake before when they were the Irish Airborne, and and obviously that was the weekend I had the flu, and I've got stories where Ethan Page didn't like how I was acting and stuff, but remember, I had the flu and I didn't want to go out and party. I had a phenomenal time at those shows.
Wait a second. So did he call you out for having an attitude problem?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, this is gonna be
yeah.
great. I cannot wait to get him on the podcast and agree with him.
Yeah. I don't have an attitude problem. I didn't, when you're like, when you got the diarrhea and you just got over the flu and you're like, hey, man, I don't want to go to a bar and drink. I just want to go home and sleep. And then he's like, no. It's like, dude, come on. You're my ride. Like, let's go. Like, I'm like, other than if it was any other weekend, great. But I just got over like the vomiting flu.
This is
And
gonna
I
be
just
great.
want to go. Like, I was gonna cancel the show. Like that's how much it was. But I'm like, I know I shouldn't. But I mean, and then obviously that gets. But you know what? Me and Ethan now, we're totally cool. Like I age in his matches and stuff. He loves when I age in his matches. We talk all the time. I mean, it's 2019, different ball game, I guess.
I did walk up to him and thank him for his hospitality because I had you reach out to him and just make sure it was okay if I could come do a podcast. I love Sami, but the last thing I wanted to do was bring it set up and then someone go, whoa, 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 what are you doing? Who'd you talk?
Yeah.
And I've learned that the first thing you do with anything is just ask permission. Not that big of a deal. 9 times out of 10, they won't care.
Yeah, and he won't. And I mean, we'll have like I already talked to Ethan. We'll have him on our podcast and stuff and talk. And we have a really good rapport. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, we're all good.
And finally, let's knock this Blue Chew ad out and go home. Thank you, PD, once again. 2-year anniversary. It's a special podcast. I got you flowers and a night out on the town.
You did? Well, you know what? I got you the same thing plus Blue Chew.
What? Did you?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
now
I
we can
really
hang
did.
out. We can hang out all night long.
We can hang out all night long. 2-year anniversaries. I mean, like 1-year anniversary is like paper. 2-year anniversary, I think, is Blue Chew.
Yeah, Blue Chew or podcast. I think that is the diamonds are out now. It's now either podcasting or Blue Chew. But let me tell you guys, we have a new promo code from Blue Chew. It's now Perspective. So hopefully you can type that all in. It helps us out more than anything if you guys go there. Look, PD's kind enough to give away a free order if you use the promo code Perspective. If you go to bluechew.com, you go through. It's all online, so there's no awkward doctor's visits. It has the same active ingredients as Cialis and Viagra, so you know it works. It's chewable, PD. Do you know what that means?
That means you could put it between your teeth and chew it, right? I mean, that's what I'm guessing chewable means.
I was going for it works twice as fast as if you had to take the pill.
Yeah, it goes straight in really quick, so you don't have to wait for the time released and all that kind of BS.
Yeah.
I get it.
So don't you no more. I know the cool thing back in the day with Viagra was you crush it up and you snort it through a straw, which is I don't know.
So.
I don't know if I'm making that up, but either way, you don't have to do that with Blue Chew. Just chew it, and that's that simple. It's made in America, so it's cheaper than the little blue pill. And ladies, listen, I know there are some of you listening right now thinking, you know what, my boyfriend doesn't need it, or my husband doesn't need it. But if you keep wrestling with mid-carders your whole life, you won't get any better. Blue Chew will help elevate your mid-card husband, your mid-card boyfriend, as I'm like insulting our fan base now, to the main event status.
Well, I mean, who doesn't want to be in the main event, right? I mean, would you rather do like main event of WrestleMania or do I don't know what it's called now. Is it called the pre-show or the?
I think pre-show.
I know there was. What is it called?
I think the pre-show is okay.
Pre-show or
kickoff show.
Oh, kickoff show. That's what they're calling it nowadays. Because they don't want those kickoff people to feel that bad, right? But why deal with the kickoff stuff or the pre-show stuff if you're a main eventer, right?
I totally agree. So go to bluechew.com, use the promo code Perspective. It helps us out a ton. Believe it or not, without that, we wouldn't be podcasting. We wouldn't have a radio show. So Blue Chew is kind enough to keep sticking around. Believe it or not, a little inside baseball for you guys. Blue Chew does podcasts in cycles. So you'll listen to like Conrad Thompson and they'll be on there for 2 months and 4 months without it, and then they come back. They've been constant with us because our fans are very loyal. So if you're listening to this and you're like, how do I help the podcast without having to spend any real money? It's $5. You pay the shipping and handling, you get something in return, you help us out, and we're happy. And speaking of spending money, one more time, and then we'll give you a recap, by the way, of what we're going to do next week, because we didn't get to any of what I really want to talk about. Whatforapparel.com/WPP. You can get a whole bunch of shirts there. Whatforapparel.com/WPP. Go check out the lineup of shirts. Buy one. It's one of the lowest priced podcast shirts out there. We're putting people over profits, and we just want to see you guys wearing shirts, so we're not jacking up the prices so I can pay off my ridiculously expensive mortgage on my brand new house that didn't come with a butler, but I do have Russ to fix everything, so it's a wash.
Yeah, and hopefully I get Russ to fix everything too. By the way, Russ is, takes Blue Chew, probably why he can fix everything. And he wears one of our T-shirts when he fixes all our stuff, right?
I agree. Now, listen, next week, Petey, we're going to talk about Matt Sydal being done with Impact Wrestling.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Sami Callihan more. If you're not sick of him now, you definitely will be on this next one. Him and his little dust-up on Twitter with one man that we're going to keep nameless, who isn't quite a fan of our podcast anymore, Pete.
Yeah, we could keep him nameless, but that'll be interesting to talk about next week.
I want to talk about Eric Bischoff and talking about how Dean Ambrose, if he leaves the WWE, doesn't matter at all for WWE. I think yes.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Randy Orton being open to looking at a contract to AEW. So those are a few topics we're going to talk about next week. We didn't get to them this week because we're celebrating our anniversary. I wanted to, be thankful for the weekend I had. It's the first weekend without you, and I kind of see where I'm now on the ladder of popularity. It's kind of cool, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, you're out of your cocoon now, fluttering your own butterfly wings. So this is good. I'm like a proud father, kind of. So I'm excited for you.
There you go. Well, Pete, happy anniversary. I'm sure I'll see you next week for another thrilling episode of the Wrestling Perspective.
Wrestling Perspective podcast. I thought we were going to say it together. Why did you stop?
Well, I don't know what voice you were going with there.
I don't know.
All right.
Anyway,
on the count of three, let's do it one more time. Ready? On the next episode of
the Wrestling Perspective. You did it again.
No, you were talking. All right.
No. Okay. Go.
All right. Okay. On the next episode of the Wrestling Perspective
podcast.
You do it. We're not going to nail this.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys. No, I'm not going to cut it. I'm leaving that in. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Happy 2-year anniversary. Thank you for listening.